Well, hello everybody. Good afternoon for many of you. Good evening for, I guess, me at this point, or it's getting to that stage of the day anyway. And welcome to our Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 What to Expect live stream. My name is Evan. I'm one of the co-founders of Flight Simulation Association, and we've put on this special live stream today as we get set for the release of Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, really just a couple of weeks away now, which is kind of crazy to think. We've been seeing the news about it. I know some of you may have access to the tech alpha and you may have tried it already, but we are just about ready to go in a couple of weeks, and we'll see how that goes within the flight simulation community. It's a pleasure to be here with you. For those of you who don't know about us at Flight Simulation Association, we're the folks who put on Flight Sim Expo, the annual convention in North America, and we do streams like this one. We do content and learning guides, and as well other in-person events, fly-ins. We've done Sun and Fun, areas where we can go to help elevate the profile of home flight simulation for people who use it as a hobby, who use it for fun, who use it as a passion, and of course also those who use it for training and even as ways to get into careers in various facets of aviation. And if you're in the chat watching with us, drop a message. Let me know if you've ever been to Flight Sim Expo, if you've been to one of our in-person shows in Vegas last June or in Houston before that, or if you've maybe just watched online and you've been part of the show. Let me know if you've ever been out to Flight Sim Expo or you've been part of our show online, and how many Flight Sim Expos you've been to as well. Always nice to see where everyone is and where you're all coming from. And I'll mention as well that this is one of our first times doing the live stream format exclusively on YouTube and Twitch. So if you've been to one of our webinars before, usually those were held on our website. We've decided to switch things up a little bit. Curious to see what you think. Obviously, one of the big reasons for that is this way we don't have to recreate that functionality that YouTube and Twitch do a whole lot better, of course, than what we were able to do on our own. And it just brings everyone kind of together into the chat all in one place. So looking forward to your feedback on what you think about this new format and in ways to continue to reach out to our members and, of course, the broader Flight Sim community as well. And in addition to us here on our YouTube channel, where you may be watching, and I'm hanging out with you in the chat there, hi guys, we are also live with HeliSimmer, with FS Elite, with Simulation Daily, Blue Games, and on Twitch with Two Tone Murphy as well. So a big hello to everyone in chat. I will be keeping an eye across all of those chats. So if you do have questions and you are wanting to ask our panelists something, drop that wherever you're watching, and we will do our best to get that answered in our Q&A portion in the second half of the show. Lots of people saying they've been to a couple different Flight Sim Expos in Vegas. I see a couple of onlines, Houston and Vegas, Vegas 2024, last two, says Ivan Sky. Ted says all of the Flight Sim Expos except for two. I don't know how they've been. Yeah, I think there's been five, Ted, but I would have to remember myself. So good stuff. And hello to all of you. Benny says Vegas was the first one, hoping to get out to Rhode Island in June. So love that. Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate the feedback there. Now, for those of you who don't know about Flight Sim Association, you can join that association free of charge, become an FSA member. You get a whole bunch of good things, including access to our Discord. You get access to some of our discounts and some of the learning content that we have designed for new flight simmers. And we're actually going to announce something we've been working on for a little while today. This is something that has been in the works for a long time, actually, and I think it's the first step in what I hope will be something even longer term and even bigger and better down the line. But for today, this is only for people who are new to Navigraph. So if you're already a Navigraph subscriber, you can close your ears, you can let your mind wander for a second and just bask in the glow of already being a subscriber. But if you're not a Navigraph subscriber, we have something to announce for you today, and that is this. If you are, or if you become a Flight Sim Association member, a first officer or a captain, join for free, doesn't matter, you can get access to 1 month of Navigraph Ultimate totally free. And that is a really cool perk as long as you're not an existing Navigraph customer. So again, it's for folks who haven't tried Navigraph, folks who don't know what this thing can do for your simulation world. You get an extra month when you become an FSA member. So if you subscribe to Navigraph Ultimate for a month, you get 2 months. And if you subscribe for the whole year, you save some money with the annual subscription and you get a 13th month totally free. If you don't know what Navigraph does, it's navigation data and charts for flight simulators. It works for all major sims, Microsoft Flight Sim, X-Plane, P3D, and it allows you to see in your simulator the waypoints, the VORs, the airports, just like they are in real life. And when in real life a particular SID or star gets updated to a new version and there's new waypoints, those aren't always in your simulator. So with Navigraph, you can make sure that all those points are always there. And I think maybe even more importantly, you also get access to charts. That's the Jeppesen charts used by airline pilots around the world. And that is for pretty much the entire world, both VFR and IFR charts. I can't think of anywhere else you can like reliably get every single chart for pretty much everywhere in the world except for Navigraph, and that's why it's one of the most popular add-ons that we see. So we're excited to announce this first step of what I hope is a longer-term partnership. If you haven't heard about Navigraph or you're thinking of subscribing, you've just bought yourself a free month, and so you can scan that QR code that's on the screen beside me and learn a little bit more about how that all works. With that in mind, I'm going to ask you one more question, which is this. If you've ever used Microsoft Flight Sim 2024, so the new one, if you've gotten access to the Tech Alpha, or maybe you were out at that event that we're about to talk about, if you've ever seen or used on your own computer Microsoft Flight Sim 2024, let us know in the chat. Just say yes if you have used it, or no if you have not used Microsoft Flight Sim 2024 just yet. Let us know if you've had any experience with the new simulator, or if, like me, you haven't seen anything of it except for what you've watched online. You haven't downloaded it yet. The Tech Alpha was open to a few different people. It wasn't like widely public, but you could have gotten access to it. So there might be some people who are watching who have actually seen and used Microsoft Flight Sim 2024. So say yes if that's you. And if you haven't seen it yet, then say no, and you're about to learn a little bit more about Microsoft Flight Sim as I bring on some of our panelists. So I'm going to go ahead and bring them onto the screen with me right now. You will see them all and hear from them over the next few moments. These are folks who were at this event that happened a couple months ago now out in Arizona, and they actually got to see for the very first time what Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 has. The day that was revealed, you saw all kinds of news and streams and pictures of what the new simulator looked like. And of course, over time, we've been able to see more of that coming at us through streams and through pieces of content, and of course, lots of news websites giving us a sense of what to expect. So I'm going to hand things over to the panel. They are here to, first of all, cover a little background on what they already know about Microsoft Flight Sim 2024. And following that, we will be answering your questions live starting in about half an hour from now. So if you have any questions, pop those in the chat. As I scroll through, quite a few on the Tech Alpha. I'm going to say almost, maybe not quite half, maybe 25-30% from what I can see who've already seen it, tried it, and about another 70% or so who will be experiencing it for the first time when it launches in a couple of weeks. But for now, I'm going to hand things over to the panel, starting with our moderator today, which is Two-Tone Murphy, who's right up there above me. Good to see you all, friends, and Two-Tone, take it away, please.
Thanks very much. I'm in charge of something brilliant, right? But I'd like to welcome everybody in. The excitement for Flight Sim 2024, well, I mean, it's really up there, right? And everyone who's here with me on our panel today, I mean, we've had an amazing opportunity to be able to try the sim some time ago, and I think some of us got a chance also to use the Tech Alpha. So as Evan said, we're only a couple of weeks away from this release, and well, I mean, we saw what we saw at Arizona. We're going to share our thoughts with that versus the Tech Alpha. And then everyone got to see the Tech Alpha. And a lot of questions around it. I think there's a lot of, positives or say, yes, this looks phenomenal. And there's also a little bit of worry there as well. So hopefully after today, well, we're as we edge closer to the release, if you have any questions or just ask us the experiences that we had, well, hopefully we can provide a clearer picture. But here with our panel today, it's a great bunch of lads. That's a great bunch, isn't it? So we'll go around the table and well, I'll get everyone to say a few words and say hello. We'll start off over that direction in which we have Giuseppe Nelva, Editor-in-Chief of Simulation Daily. You're very welcome in, Giuseppe.
Hello, everyone, and nice to be here. Thank you for the opportunity and your viewership.
Sweet. Next up, we have Vasco, lead editor with MSFS Addons.com. Vasco, I was raging I didn't get to see you over there in Arizona, but sure, listen, there's a beer on ice somewhere for us. How are you keeping?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Very excited for what's coming on our way. The last 4 years have been a very fun ride, and I think the next 4 years at least are going to be even better. So I think everyone should be really excited about what's coming.
Sweet. And next up, a man with no introduction needed at all, Sergio Costa, the what was the word we used? The dawn of the helicopter mafia. You're very welcome in, Sergio. Sergio, of course, we got to spend some time over in at Expo, and of course at in the Grand Canyon. And
Yes.
well, how are you keeping?
I'm okay. I'm super excited about this new version of the sim. Can't wait to see what's coming. What we saw in Grand Canyon was fantastic. The Tech Alpha, well, we'll talk about it. But I think we're getting a new golden age for flight sims. So really excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Sweet. And last but not least, a man with even less need of an introduction. It is that of Blue Games, the creator of content. Blue, you're very welcome in, man. How are you?
Yes. Thank you so much for introducing. Yeah, I'm just glad to be here. Excited for 24, obviously, and there's so much to unpack. I mean, I can't believe it's almost here. I'm just trying to keep myself busy for a couple weeks. You know what I mean? Until it gets here. But yeah, excited.
Sweet. Like, we have timers counting down the days, hours, and minutes. I mean, that's where it's at for us, right? But we do have a couple of questions. I'll ask a couple of questions, and we'll try and answer them. But just again, going around the panel, we all got to try out a different build of the sim. Right. I mean, the Tech Alpha, which came out a few weeks back, we had the opportunity to try out something different, and that was over in the States. So I suppose starting off with maybe Giuseppe, if we asked the question, what was the earlier build like? How did it feel for you, where Flight Sim 2024 was going?
Finally, I actually would not call it an earlier build. I would call it a different build, because Tech Alphas, from what I've been I have a lot of experience in the gaming industry, so I hear developers tell me about Tech Alphas a lot and betas and whatever. To create a Tech Alpha like that takes months. So basically, you need to branch out that specific part that you're gonna turn into the Tech Alpha months before, and you don't even have that many developers working on it, because most of the developers obviously are gonna work on the main simulator, the main branch. So it's probably gonna be like a 3, 4, 5 developers working on it for 3-4 months. So probably the Tech Alpha is the older build, and what we try is probably a newer build, because it had more things. So, but in the difference was a pretty start for me. What we tried in Arizona was a lot better, and it felt a lot more polished. Of course, it had problems because it was two months before, and probably older than 2 months before, because even that build needs to be polished and tested to be shown to journalists and to influencer, whatever. They're not going to show you an untested, unproven build, because that's very risky on the PR point of view. So obviously, but I think it was a very impressive build. I actually did not have much time with the Tech Alpha at all, because I was in Japan and I didn't have my gaming computer. I tried the Tech Alpha on on one of the portable things, like the Asus ROG Ally. So it was very choppy on that. But yeah, I just had time to dabble a little bit in the options and whatnot, see if it actually works. And it does work if you crank down all the detail. It works on that kind of portable little computer. But the build that we tried in Arizona was very, very impressive. It had problems that any alpha, like anything 3 months before launch has, but I am excited for it, and I was impressed, very impressed.
Sweet. And Vasco, I mean, the work you've been doing, we say 4 years because we're just going by the years, but I mean, you've been looking at flight sims for quite some time. Your experience over in Arizona, seeing the sim, and I suppose just the whole 2024 thing. I mean, from your perspective, is there anything that has really stood out for you when you're looking at this based on all the content you've covered with MSFS Addons? I mean, is there anything that's really shouting loud for you?
Yeah, I think the key takeaway for me, from what I've seen and from what I expect from MSFS 2024, is that it's going to be like we are in the golden age of flight simulation, but especially now for general aviation, because that's the kind of flying that I feel people will see the most differences. because of all the changes on the terrain, which is a key new feature of the new sim. I'd say airline pilots will not see as much of that because they take off from an airport, climb to 40,000 feet, and then land on a big airport, and that's mostly the same experience. And what you will see from above will be generally very similar. But for those who like to fly the small airplanes in small airports and backcountry flying, bush flying, those MSFS 2020 was already a big change and a big evolution for that kind of flying. And now with the MSFS 2024, it's another revolutionary step for GA and Sergio will have the opportunity to talk about that, I'm sure, for helicopters as well. Those who fly low and generally slow are in for a very, very fun experience if everything goes well.
What a great segue. You'd swear we knew what we were doing. Well, you swear I knew what I was doing. Great segue. But Sergio, yes, I mean, look, when it comes to helicopters, I mean, it's definitely your forte. I mean, that's I suppose where your passion is. From what you've seen so far, what are you impressed of perhaps? And is there anything there you're not as impressed?
Well, yeah, helicopters are kind of my thing. Just a little bit. As you know, it's pretty much what I've been flying since. I've been using flight simulators for a long time, around 30 years. But since 2006, 2007, more or less, I started flying helicopters, and that's all I fly. So all my interest goes towards helicopters. And because of that, when Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 came out, I was really impressed with what they had done, although a bit disappointed because helicopters weren't there. But one of the things that Microsoft told me the very first day, the very first instant they got to talk to me, was that helicopters were not there, but they were going to add them later because they wanted to add them properly. Mm-hmm. So they have been listening to the community. And that's one of the things that I take from Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 is the fact that they are listening to the community. And I know that a lot of people won't think that way because there are some things that are still missing. There are some things they still have problems. There are still problems with ATC and a lot of other systems that people use. So in that regard, people may think that Microsoft is playing deaf or playing dumb or just ignoring them. The thing is, there are a lot of different systems. And from what we start to see with this new version with Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, using the AI platform for voices, for example, which is very interesting, I'm starting to see that they probably want to take a different path regarding ATC. I was really excited to see the new ground modeling, the new ground handling, all the new stuff, the cool stuff. The fact that the rotor wash now does have an effect on grass and other stuff. So like Vasco was saying, this is a very big step forward for people that like general aviation, that like helicopters, bush flying, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, we had Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. Well, pretty much all the major sims out there, and most of us use more than one, like X-Plane, etc., etc. They pretty much nailed airliners, right? Because, again, was said already, you take off, you go to 5 digits, you fly up to 5 digits, you land on another airport, and it's a good experience for people that like that. But it's an experience that has been nailed down for quite some time. And with Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, they started to expand things for other kinds of flights like helicopters, gliders, more general aviation. I think 2024 is a huge step forward in that direction as well. So yeah, I'm super excited. I loved the demo. I loved the presentation that we were able to see firsthand with the team talking about what's coming. Mm-hmm. I am a skeptical guy, but I told this to Jorg and the team. After the presentation, it was 2019 all over again. I went to the US skeptical. I came out completely overwhelmed and convinced that this is a great step forward.
Nice. And for anyone else who's watching in, if you have any questions, guys, do be putting them in the chat. We'll have a look. But the same question to Blue, because Blue, I mean, you utilize all types of simulations, right? And when it comes to flight sim, it's not just with Flight Simulator. You're one of those rare, unique creatures that can actually utilize DCS, Flight Sim, X-Plane, P3D. I mean, you can control these all. So when it came to Flight Sim 2024, when you first got a look at it, you have a lot of experience from all the other sims combined. So again, same question. I mean, did anything jump out at you to say this is really cool? And did you see anything that kind of caused a bit of worry?
Yeah, so my initial reaction, honestly, cause we were part of the first day of previews, and so it wasn't completely ironed out, and so it was a bit worrying because we didn't really get a great quality gameplay experience initially. But once they kind of got those bugs figured out after our lunch break, it was much easier to run in. But even then, I mean, it was still a few bugs here and there, and it's just when we played it in person in Arizona, it was like, okay, this is cool. This has a lot of really good potential, but there's a long way to go here still. A lot of things need to be kind of fine tuned. You know, like it's honestly one of my first times getting to play a game that early. So I get it. I understand that it's alpha things you gotta figure out whatever. And so I still found fun. Like you said, I do play a lot of different sims, a lot of different flight sims, and so honestly, like there's no other flight sim like Microsoft even 2020 right now. And so 2024 is a major upgrade. And I think what I tell people is that if you're like into low flying, like GA or helicopter flying, this is a day one for you. Like you are going to be impressed. You're going to love it. All the stuff that happens close to the ground, whether it be the crops, the dirt on your aircraft, bush flying, helicopter flying, the missions, all that kind of stuff like that has really been focus heavy in 2024. And if my airliner people, because there's a lot of those people as well, is like, well, what's in it for us? A lot of them are looking at the sim like, it looks the same, right? Because you, like you said, you go up to like 40, 30,000, 40,000 feet, and everything looks the same in 2020 versus 2024. I think the biggest difference there is actually kind of a bit more the weather implementation. A lot of people have been complaining about there being a lack of turbulence through clouds, and the clouds in general, the weather in clouds is much more immersive, much more enjoyable and interesting. That the clouds are larger, the way they react to the aircraft is much better. The airflow simulation has been improved. And then coming down for landing and getting in the ground physics and the trees. Like one thing we always talk about is that one thing that makes Microsoft 2020 special versus the other flight sim that out there is that when you're on approach, and you can think about this in any other aircraft, when you're on approach, seeing the trees fly underneath you, right, gives you a sense of speed and height, which is really cool. And because they're so like clustered together, you know what I'm saying? It's like you get even more of that immersion. And so in 24, you get the similar feeling, right? But they're 3D. They're now 3D. And when I was flying in the Tech Alpha, I was impressed because I could see trees all the way to the horizon. Like I was like, wow. Like I was flying out in the flatlands of the Yukon Valley in an X Cub, and I was just following the river. And I look to my left, and I see trees as far as the eye can see. There's no mountains in the way. There's no hills. It's crazy. And so, yeah, I mean, there's so many things honestly that impress me about it, and I'm more excited honestly about this being the new base for everything that's going to be built on top of it. That's honestly what I'm more excited about than the actual 2024 itself is what can third-party developers do with these new tools.
Sweet. Well, I'm going to ask you directly the next question, but then I invite our panelists then just to jump in as well. We'll have a bit of fun with this. But is Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024? Is it still for core simmers? I mean, all the new features that we're seeing with the likes of the career mode and the missions and the virtual tourism. Is it getting more like a game, or do you think it's still holding up to being a simulator? And Blue, what do you think on that?
Yeah, so I strongly disagree with people when they call Microsoft Flight Sim 24 a game. And I understand why. I get it, because it definitely has some gamey and gamified features, right? But at the end of the day, at its core, it's basically take Microsoft 2020 and add like a couple game modes to it, right? So if you were already only using free mode before to do whatever you wanted, fly airliner, fly helicopters, like whatever it is you were simming, right? You can do that still in 24. It's just now, all right, they've added more things for you to do outside of free mode. So if you want to go into the world photographer and do some photography stuff, because it's the thing. Yes, we're a flight sim. Yes, we're a niche, but there's a lot of interesting other parts of aviation. And I was actually talking to somebody recently who, like, they're an aviation photographer. That is their actual job. Like, they go out there and they just take photos and GoPro shots in different crazy locations. That's an actual job. And so are all the other things that are in the career mode. And people are saying, oh, all these careers and, helicopter rescue and Bannerton, and it's all gamey. Like, well, I mean, at the end of the day, X-Plane is a game, P3D is a game, DCS is a game. You know, like all these are actual games. None of these are real. Like, come on, none of these are real. And so the only difference is with Microsoft Flight Sims, they've added assistance to help people who don't understand, you know, how to start their aircraft, or don't understand how do I go and tow a banner, how do I begin to try and do firefighting, right? Like they've added assistance and things like that, and you can turn all that off, which is what I'm going to do, because I see myself as like more of a core simmer. Like I want the full immersion. I want to learn how to fly the aircraft from cold and dark. I want to take off. I want to fly out to the AO or the wherever we're going, right? And I want to do everything myself. That's the way I like to sim. But what Microsoft 2024 and Asobo and Microsoft are doing is they're trying to cater to a much larger audience. And we have, how many is it, Murphy? Like 5 million or some crazy amount of people.
15 or something, yeah.
15 million.
Yeah.
15 million users.
50 million people who are playing Microsoft Flight Sim. You think all of them know how to fly a plane? No. Think about before 2020 came out, right? Think about the flight sim community before 2020 came out. Let's just rewind back for a second. We probably had maybe 1 million or 2, maybe, like when a big thing happened. And so 2020 comes along, adds 10 million to that, right? And now there's a bunch of new people who are getting into the community and learning from the beginning. And they're going to graduate. Some of them are going to just, this is not for me. But some of them are going to continue to learn and do more and do more and do more all by themselves. But my point is, I'm going to make my point here, is that all the career stuff are careers. These are real life careers. This is not just, oh, let's go and take let's go do this for XP, for example. Like these are actually careers that they're simulating, and all the things you can do in 2024, you can do or have an ambition to do in real life. And so that's why I don't believe it's a game, yes, but at the same time, it depends on how you play it.
Yeah. Microsoft solved a few issues with them. They're trying not just to give people more to do, but they're trying to solve other issues as well. One of the things that people talked a lot, and again, this comes from them listening to the community. Again, like I was saying earlier. So one of the things they wanted to solve a few issues. One of them was the fact that people had no way to actually learn how to use the sim, how to fly aircraft. And those career paths that they are introducing is a way for people to actually be able to do that, which is completely optional. Like Blue said, if you are using free mode and you want to continue to use free mode, that's up to you. You can continue to do so. Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 is not taking anything away from Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, is building on top of what the sim already is at this time. So you have that ability to learn if you have no other ways of learning. And yes, you can argue and say that there are a lot of YouTube tutorials out there. There are a lot of things that people can read. But this is obviously completely different. You have lessons inside the actual sim that tell you what to do, and you can advance. You can start with taking your PPL and go commercial, multiple engine, helicopters, etc., etc., etc. So there's something they can do. Like Blue was saying, these are real missions that actually aviation does. Aviation is not just being a glorified bus with wings, and I'm not talking about Airbuses or Boeings. It's a bus with wings, bringing people from A to B. And it's actually ironic because a lot of people that complain about the fact that Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 is a game because they have these missions are the ones that probably buy things like GSX, which puts passengers into the aircraft for them to be able to actually take to other places. So it is part of the aviation. Another problem that they are trying to solve is that, like a lot of us that have learned how to fly helicopters, airliners, whatever, we came to a point in which we just continue flying because we are passionate about aviation. A lot of people may not have the same amount of passion we have, and flying just because they fly, it becomes boring for them. So this is a way for them to try different things. And one of the things that I think they also solved, which was, I don't think it was a problem, but I think it was something that, well, it's not a problem because people don't actually talk about it, but I think it's a very nice byproduct, is the fact that by introducing these missions, especially photography, again, picking up on what Blue was saying, the photography missions will bring people to get to know other parts of the world that they probably wouldn't visit unless they had some kind of challenge or some kind of thing to do inside the game. Mm-hmm. So to those people that, are shouting that Microsoft Flight Simulator is a game because they have missions, you are either completely misunderstanding the concepts, or you just want to bash the product because you want to bash the product seriously. Because I don't see any reason for someone to look at something that builds on top of the product and say that it is destroying the product for some reason. I think it's crazy.
Like, it's a great point to make. I mean, when you think about it, right? Let's say, for example, learning to drive a car. Now, if you were completely, you haven't a clue about anything to do with cars or anything else, you only know that a car is a mode of transport to get you from A to B. But like we talk about cars, you'll talk about, well, there's vintage cars, there's motorsport, there's law enforcement. Like, there's a whole world attached to what that is. And that's the point. I think it's a very valid point. I mean, here you have, and this kind of comes back to the age-old argument, what's a simulator versus what's a game. And even just browsing through all the live chats that I can see, there's many lads, but the point, one of them coming in, like, it can be both, right? I mean, it can be a game or it can be a sim, and that depends on what the user wants out of it. I would say, I mean, for me, if I want to go learn a procedure, a real world procedure, there's a huge cost, right? The cost of entry to do that is huge. If I can replicate that to the best I can in a flight sim, well, then it's a simulator, right? I mean, it's simulating something. And I think what they're doing with Microsoft, it's balancing the whole thing, right? They're not going to necessarily go down one rabbit hole to say, well, we're just going to make sure that prop wash physics are the most realistic, and that's our thing. But at the same time, they're not kind of saying, well, insert coin and we'll give you another life and you can keep flying. So there are differences definitely there. And it's up to the user, really. What are you getting out of it? Is it a sim for you? Are you simulating something, or maybe you are gaming? I don't think there's really a positive or a negative depending on what your answer is, right? I mean, I know plenty of folks who would look at flight sim as a game. I know a whole lot of folks who would look at it as a sim. Vasco, what do you think? I mean, where are you on the fence of this?
Yeah, actually, I think it's perfectly okay to think that Microsoft Flight Sim is, especially now, as much as a simulator as a game. Because what I feel Microsoft is trying to do is both broadening the scope of what Microsoft Flight Sim is and trying to reach new audiences, but also at the same time, it's going deeper into what is the core of Flight Sim. We have more advanced avionics, you have more advanced flight dynamics and physics, we have more airplanes, more in-depth and realistic airplanes. And at the same time, they are trying to bring a whole new audience, which perhaps, if I look back at my own history and probably yours as well, I didn't start flight simming 10 or 15 years ago as a simmer. I started almost as a gamer. I had a fascination with aviation, and I started flying and goofing around FSX, and then learning and going deeper into what actually aviation is, and trying to be as realistic as possible. So there's a path that I think is common across most of the audience of Microsoft Flight Simulator. So, and especially now with MSFS 2024, we will see, I would say, a gamification of the platform, but that doesn't take away anything of what makes it a simulator, if you know what I mean. Because like Sergio was saying, by adding the career mode and the missions and all that stuff, they're not taking away any of the experience that hardcore simmers have enjoyed for years. Mm-hmm. It's just another module that they are bringing in and that people can play around with. I'm sure a lot of new folks will love it. I will love it, I'm sure. It's going to be very fun. But still, if all you want to do is take your A320 or 737 and fly from Heathrow to Paris, you can do that even better, potentially, and that's our expectation. There's no reason to don't see that in the new sim, and you can still do that. So it's not they're not taking anything away from the platform. They are just adding more stuff and trying to do one thing that I think it's critical, mm-hmm. which is thinking about the long-term success and reliability and the possibility of continuing to have a high quality and a high quality platform like Microsoft Flight Simulator. Because if we think about FSX, there was a time when it was popular when it launched, and then things got a bit stagnant. The hobby was.
There's still people using FSX, which is mad. They still use it. You know what I mean? Which it's like what? And I think people are still using Flight Sim 2004.
Probably, yeah.
Which is
one thing I wanted to add is,
mods.
like we've been, I'm a little old, so I remember the times before FSX, and I think this question, is it a sim or a game, kind of become en vogue during the times of FSX. It was much less before because flight simulation has always been, especially in the older times, seen as a genre of gaming. Like any simulation, there are millions of simulation in gaming. There's racing simulations, there is the sim simulations, there is a strategic simulation, war simulation, whatever. And one thing that's funny is that the question, is this less of a simulation because it has career? It blows my mind. It really blows my mind. So in return, I'm going to blow your mind too and tell you Microsoft is lying. Microsoft has been telling we are doing something new here with the career. They are not, because it may be a little bit more new in civilian simulation, but career has been in hardcore flight simulators for a long time. Military one, it's called the campaign. Like, and
So
it's
true.
exactly the same thing. It's not different. If you fly on DCS, you have 2,494 campaigns, and that they add to the experience. They don't subtract to the experience. And Eagle Dynamics is working on a dynamic campaign, which is a career. So they're just adding the same thing to civilian simulation that military simulation has had forever. And a lot of those flight simulators that we love, like Falcon and whatnot, they had campaigns because that's what gave you a reason to do things. And so, yeah, I hope I blow your mind as much as your question that if this is less of a simulator, blows my mind, because we have had campaigns forever and they are the career. We're just getting back something that civilian flight simulator has lacked compared to military flight simulator.
And I'll back that up too. Is all the simulation, all the most realistic sims out there right now are all working on some sort of career mode, because that's kind of what's missing. A lot of times, these developers, they focus really hard on the physics and realism of the thing that they're doing, which they should, right? That's what we want as the core sims. We want the flight sim to be on point, right? We want all that before you go and add on career stuff. And I think that's what Microsoft kind of did with 2020. 2020 was kind of like a test bed, right, for the last 4 years, where they've been kind of just hitting the sim updates and the avionics updates and acquiring companies to do this and do that. And I think if it wasn't for that, if they had just come out with like, oh, okay, cool, it's still flies horrible, but now we have career, like, you know what I mean? So since they're actually putting focus on that and adding the career, I think honestly, it's just flight sim is behind. We're really behind. We're a niche, obviously, but we're really up behind the game industry, and the game industry has been doing career modes and stuff like that for a long time, right? And just because we're adding it to our sim or game, it doesn't make it a game. Like you said, it's just we're finally progressing forward and giving our community more to do, right? And as a person who's been flight simming for a while, I've done all the airline routes, I've flown all the bush trips, you know what I mean, like that. And it's you get to a point where you can like, all right, what do I do now? What do I fly today? I don't know. If you don't have any progression or a sense of progress or a sense of purpose in flight sim, it's like, well, what do I do today? Like, I've used things like On Air, things like FS Economy, NeoFly. I've used every single career mode thing that exists as third party, and all because I want more reasons to fly a plane that I like. Yes, I love the Comanche, or yes, I love the PMD G73 or whatever, right? But I want more reasons to use those things, right? And so I think that career mode does that, and that's what I'm looking forward to in 24.
It's a great point, and like, I have to throw it in there. Well, you can't tow a banner in DCS, right? I'm only messing. I'm sure you can't though. But like, when we talk about some of the options, right? I mean, here we have this new sim. It's a standalone simulator, right? And we'll kind of go off script a little bit. I mean, when you look at what is possible now, over the last 4 years, we've seen with Flight Sim 2020, anything from the add-ons, the aircraft, the sceneries, the different plugins, the virtual airlines, all of that, and even like as you say, I mean, FS Economy and so many other plugins, let's call them, and that can be attached to a sim. I mean, the next 4 years is going to be pretty wild because I mean, a huge part of Flight Sim 2024, and you know, Microsoft and Asobo have said this, they want to give developers way more power to be able to create new stuff and make things better. I mean, is there anything, again, going around the panel, is there anything yet to be created? I mean, is there anything that you're kind of sitting there saying, I wish they would just make this?
Well, developers are very creative. And that's the thing. Whenever a platform opens up for developers, for third-party developers, we see solutions for problems we didn't know we had. So I think we are going to continue to see that. For example, there's now an EFB from Asobo, and developers will be able to create apps just for that. So who knows?
That's game changing alone.
Yeah, that's going to open so many possibilities. I mean, now all this entire community is going to get very creative and start to think how they can play around with the new tools that Asobo and Microsoft are giving them. And we'll have to see. But I think we're going to be, if we have this conversation in a year, we'll be very surprised with all the new stuff that people will be making.
Okay, sweet. Right, we'll move on now to another question. And I can see, again, guys, everyone here in the chat,
Murphy,
thank you very much.
One quick thing, Murphy. I expect one thing that's going to happen. Someone is going to let you play games in the AFP. Absolutely. I'm expecting that.
I want to play Doom.
Yeah,
I want to play Doom, and I don't even use the EFB. So.
All right. So, another question, right? And I'll kind of do like a mix match kind of a thing. Is there anything you're worried about? Right. I mean, we've seen the trailers. We all saw the trailers back in 2019. We saw the release of Flights in 2020. And we were only chatting about this briefly. I mean, when it was released, there was so much, hey, look at this flashing light over here. We didn't necessarily focus in on any of the, I don't want to say shortfallings, but there were a couple of bugs, right? Is there anything that you're looking at with the imminent release of Flights in 2024? Where's the worry? I mean, what do you think would be detrimental if they get it wrong on release? What's the one kind of showstopper?
2020 add-ons.
2020 add-ons?
Yeah, compatibility.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Vasco.
Just a brief one. And when you start adding 2020 add-ons, how much that's going to change what you expect from MSFS 2024, like the loading times. I think that's going to create, I mean, you will start with the default sim. It's going to load very quickly, and people should be prepared to, once they start loading that community folder with 2020 content, to see those loading times just become much slower. I saw some comment from a developer a couple of days ago. He said, oh, I have my scenery on the 2024. It loaded in 45 minutes, but now I see improvements. Now it's loading in 15 minutes. So it's better. So you see
45? What the heck?
Yeah, I don't know. And he saw improvements, and he managed to, I mean, just in a few minutes or hours of work, to bring it out to 15 minutes. So you can imagine, with all the amount of content that there is around, and people have installed like hundreds of gigabytes, once they start putting that in, they will, I think that magic of those really fast loading times, it will disappear, and it's going to be a bit frustrating. And yeah, we'll see some complaints about that.
Yeah,
compatibility with all the add-ons.
Yeah, not to mention the SDK now comes or brings or indicates a few shortcomings that will probably be a bit hard to go around it. A lot of add-ons probably don't have as many polys as the hard limits they have now imposed. But yeah, there's probably going to be some problems with some of the add-ons. My concern is a bit more generic. They have done so many things to different systems, and they have had multi-thread, multi-core support. They have changed the flight dynamic system. There's so much stuff that was changed that I am just concerned that things, for some reason, start to break over time, especially flight dynamics. On one end, I'm super excited about the fact that they have expanded the amount of surfaces in an aircraft, reduced the size of those surfaces. They have improved the CFD, the computational fluid dynamics system. So there's a lot of new stuff, but at the same time, this of course worries me because we're talking about software that was changed, and with all those changes, we will eventually find a way to break it somehow. I'm more concerned about that than I am about the retrocompatibility with add-ons, because I am sure that the developers will end up bringing that up to speed, but there's something that we cannot bring up to speed. Third-party developers cannot touch, and those are the core systems for the sim. We have to remember that a lot, again, I am repeating myself, but this is really relevant. There was a lot of systems that were changed or improved. And with those changes and those improvements, stuff can break. And that's my main concern.
Well, I suppose like it leads us nicely in, right? I mean, we're talking about flight dynamics, how they're gonna be different in 2024. We've all experienced that, right? I mean, we have similar feedback to say, no, they definitely feel different. But when we look at the tech, and as Sergio says, flight dynamics, they're a huge thing. But then we got to look at, they're moving the client. I mean, this is now absolutely an internet required product, this new thin client, and server loading, how's all this going to work out? The data consumption, right? I mean, when we talk about how things are going to be different in 2024, I mean, what do we think? I mean, is this a step in the right direction, as in, yeah, make the whole thing online and it'll be faster loading? Or is this, no, lads, there's a huge issue here?
I have mixed feelings regarding that, Murphy. To be honest, I think people are freaking out because of all this, and they actually have freaked out with Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 when Azobo started talking about streaming. And I think that when people hear the word streaming, they immediately start thinking about Netflix and that kind of stuff, in which the content is not actually on your end, it's being streamed, and you are watching the content as it's streamed to your computer. Streaming in this case, it's something different. What Azobo is doing is, instead of you downloading 130 plus gigabytes into your hard drive and everything loads on startup, we are downloading a lot less, and only the stuff that we need is being downloaded. So for example, the default aircraft are not going to be downloaded to our machines until we want to actually use the aircraft. From then on, it will be on our computer. So it's not like they are streaming the aircraft in real time and we can only fly because we have internet connection. The aircraft will be on our side. The thing that concerns me is the fact that, because this is a kind of a rolling cache system, on the long run, we may have a bigger use of bandwidth, because there are some things, for example, that there may be, for example, a helicopter, an aircraft, whatever, that I've downloaded 6 months ago and I haven't used it. And I have been flying around the world, so I have been downloading little pieces for different regions. And all of a sudden, I want to use that aircraft again, and it has to be downloaded again from the marketplace or whatever. That's a concern that I have. Other than that, I don't think it's an issue. And I think people are just blowing this out of proportion. For a lot of people, and I'm probably one of them, I'm including that group, I don't fly well. Perhaps I will start flying more on different regions of the world because of the new mission system and the photography mode and whatnot. But I tend to fly on 3 or 4 different regions around the world, and I just fly helicopters. So I have 15, 20 helicopters installed. I don't even know how many. So I have a very limited subset of things that I use. So for me, in the long run, I'll probably download a lot less than I would have to if I had to install 130 plus gigabytes on my machine, of which I would only use 10% of that. So again, I have mixed feelings. I don't think it's going to be an issue, but time will tell.
I have a thing to say about this, because I think most people think that the cache is going away, like the ability to download stuff manually is going away, but they clarified pretty clearly that you're still gonna have control on what you download. You can the content manager is still going to be there, the rolling cache is still going to be there. So if you want to pre-cache everything, if you want to like pre-download everything like you did it before, you still can. That power is still in your hands. So I think the thin client and the ability, the streaming and whatnot, is an added advantage for people that have a lot of bandwidth, and they can do it so that they have more bandwidth than space in their SSDs. Personally, I have a lot of space on my SSDs. I have like 4 SSDs all dedicated to Flight Simulator. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna manually download all I know I'm going to use a lot, and then that is absolutely going to lower my my download requirement by a lot. So that you can still do that. That's not going away. So don't worry about that. As long as you do have internet, you're probably going to be able to find a good balance between that pre-downloading and downloading on the fly when you need it.
Yeah, like it's again, like we got to see it release first. I think we all want this thing to be brilliant, right? We all want this thing to release and be exactly what we're able to see, and we just want it to work, right? There's a nice segue again here. So some of the questions coming in here from our audience. So a couple of guys asking VR headset experience, including that with the Pimax Crystal Light partnership, right? There was a Pimax at the global preview, and some guys got to use it. I got a chance to use it, and I think Sergio, you got a chance as well.
Yeah.
And when it comes to VR in flight sim, right? Is there anything good or bad? I mean, I think this is the first time we were actually seeing a VR manufacturer being an official partner, right? I don't believe another VR provider has done this before. I could be wrong. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I don't know. Look, here's the thing. I'm not trying to be cynical or anything like this, but I perhaps Microsoft and Pimax are actually collaborating with each other. I see this more as I wouldn't call it a marketing stunt, but it's marketing. From my perspective, I think it's marketing. I don't think there's a lot going on behind the scenes. This is definitely, although Microsoft already knows, since Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 came out and they added VR, they are on the VR bandwagon, and VR is being present on Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 since the beginning. There are quite a few headsets out there. Microsoft Flight Simulator works on all of them. I don't know a single headset in which Microsoft Flight Simulator doesn't work, with the eventual exception of the Windows Media Reality headsets that may stop working altogether because of Windows 11. I don't think there is a huge advantage because Microsoft was already on the bandwagon. It's not like Microsoft was ignoring VR, and now because of this partnership, things are going to change and they are going to be more VR friendly. They had that concern. And we addressed those concerns with Microsoft when we were at the event. We talked to them. A good friend of mine, Jose, the VR pilot, has been in contact with both Pimax and also Microsoft. And they had the headsets back at the global preview event. So in a general way, I think it's a good thing that Microsoft is looking at VR very seriously. But I don't really believe that's going to be a big advantage for us consumers with this partnership, with the eventual exception of perhaps some, marketing stuff that's going to happen, because maybe some price drops. We saw price drop very recently, where it was just $10. But okay, perhaps we'll see some, I don't know, some bundles, something like that. In that sense, if for some reason we had some good discounts in the future on the headsets, that could help get more people into VR, that could be a good thing. Other than that, Marshall, really, I don't see a major advantage right now. We don't have any indications of right now from either Microsoft or Pimax that something revolutionary could come into the sim or VR in the sim.
Like, I suppose, like me using it there and using it now, it is very, very good. And like, again, it kind of goes back to our previous question, because I see folks are still putting it in there. Like, internet speed, just to be clear on this, I think we had a 12 meg connection in Arizona, and it was around 12. It wasn't very fast, and that enabled us to get the experience that we got, including VR. And yes, there was jankiness in the menus, and there was jankiness kind of when you're going into different options. But when you're flying during the flight, I mean, for me, that thing was smooth as butter. It really, really was. And in VR as well. I mean, it was butter smooth, which is great.
We have to consider one thing that's important. Like, the event in Arizona was actually pretty much the harshest test you could have for the internet connection, because we were literally in a village in the middle of nowhere, like a couple of kilometers from the Grand Canyon, and in a hotel. So unless, I don't know if like Microsoft did something special there, but I don't know if we're sharing the hotel's connection. But I can promise you that if you live in a city that's decently connected, your internet connection is probably going to be better than what we had in the middle of the desert.
Yeah, and we were like 30 guys or something, all in connection. Yeah,
25 at the same time. So yeah,
it was fine.
What are your guys' thoughts when it comes to explaining if premium deluxe aircraft are going to be available from 2020 and 2024? I mean, I get it now, but like, I had to kind of sit down for a while after trying to figure it all out. I mean, how do you feel the transparency was? I mean, the understanding is any premium aircraft that you own in 2020 are going to be converted over to 2024, right?
That's what I understood.
Yeah.
So basically, the way I had to kind of explain it to myself is that if you own Premium Deluxe in 2020, and you have like the 787 and whatever else is in part of that, and you come to 2024 and you only buy the standard, you're still gonna have your Premium Deluxe aircraft, even though you got the new standard. So you don't have to go and buy Premium Deluxe again if you don't want to. And I think that's the best way I've had to explain it to myself.
Yeah, I have that impression as well. You do get the premium stuff that you had from 2020, but if you only buy the standard in 2024, you only get the new standard aircraft from 2024. You keep everything you already had.
Yeah, the main question I had was switching between different platforms. Like, if you are on Xbox Store versus Steam or whatever, like, I'll be very I know they kind of said that it's supposed to translate, but I would be nervous if I was trying to translate between Steam and Xbox or Microsoft Store, because those usually, in the other games that I've played, usually don't talk to each other. But
yeah, I was
York said that they're supposed to.
I was surprised when they announced that you get to keep your premium aircraft in 2024, because I totally did not expect them to do that.
Yeah,
they didn't have to do that, like to let you keep the 787 in 2024. They could have simply told you had a premium, you gotta buy the premium, because you're still getting a lot of advantages, like something that people don't really think about much. You get big discounts in buying aircraft in the store, for instance, the Microsoft ones, when you have the premium, the premium and the premium deluxe. So you get a lot of stuff. And the fact that they actually let you keep the aircraft if it works, because it's surprising for me.
I think what might be even more clear for us who already own 2020 is to instead have an aircraft list that only shows the new planes and not include the 2021, just so you know, what am I upgrading to? What am I getting if I get the standard of the deluxe, premium deluxe, aviator edition, whichever?
But then again, is it the case or is it not the case? I mean, if you have a 2020 premium aircraft, right, is that going to go into 2024 as a 2024 native aircraft, or is it coming over like as a converted 2020 aircraft, meaning you don't get the new features like walk around, or it's available in the career? I mean, that's
my thought as well. Yeah, that's my thought as well. They update all the aircraft? That's the thing. We don't know.
Yeah, they haven't really been specific about what has been improved with the older 2020. They're just supposed to work in 24. But yeah, we don't
It
know.
would seem like a needless complication to make you like have different versions depending on what. I don't know. We're probably not the right people to ask. You probably have to ask Microsoft about that.
Yeah. Like there's I see another question there just in relation to hardware, and again it's something that we've seen. I mean, in at the global preview, they pretty much had every major bit of hardware, right? I mean, did everything from, you know, Thrustmaster, they had Turtle Beach, they had Honeycomb, they pretty much everything there. So I'm not too worried in relation to hardware. And again, if your equipment is relatively new, you're going to get support from hardware devs. Stuff like SPAD, I don't see that having an issue, because I mean, we've seen already a lot of programs that are interacting with the sim, either with Sim Connect or whatever else. They seem to kind of work. Even that was with the Tech Alpha. Unless you guys think anything different.
No, I don't think there's anything different. And honestly, I think that, you know, in a very short amount of time after the sim is released, if something is not working, I mean, joysticks in general, they should be working, right? Because Microsoft Flight Simulator is using whatever comes from Windows, all the data, the signal data that comes from Windows. So I don't think there's going to be any difference there. Things like SPADs or other kinds of applications or software that may be using Sim Connect, and for some reason things may break. I think it's just a matter of a very short amount of time until someone fixes it and gets it working. I wouldn't be worried about it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What about performance? I mean, from what we saw at the event and the Tech Alpha to where, you know, Flight Sim 2020 is running right now on our own PCs or Xbox. I don't know if you guys use Xbox, but like, where do you think the performance is at? I mean, for me, as I said, at the global preview, it was butter smooth in flight. For the Tech Alpha, it was still pretty butter smooth in flight. And okay, we could argue that's because it's a vanilla sim. There's no other add-ons in there, right? And even of the add-ons that are in there, well, there's only 2 or 3. Where do you think the performance is? I mean, do you think you're going to need a NASA grade PC to get the best out of the sim? Because even when it comes to the, you know, minimum requirements, we're looking at stuff. They've put in the recommended and then they put in ideal. I don't think they should have used the word ideal, because that has a lot of people thinking, well, I'm going to need those, as opposed to recommended. I mean, recommended is for a 4K experience, right?
Personally, I'm actually one of the few, apparently, talking to you guys and other people, that perceive some stutters at the event in Arizona. But you told me, Murphy, that we had a 4070 as a graphic card, so that actually put it back in perspective, because I expected them to give us PCs with like 4090s or not. We were playing at 4K with a 4070, which is a 1440p cards mostly. Like I have a 4080 and I play at 40p like 2020. So I'm not surprised anymore that maybe there were a little bit of starters here and there, because yeah, they were pushing on those cards a lot. Actually, I'm surprised that it worked that well.
Yeah, I think that is another point in where people are just freaking out as well, Murphy. Honestly, from we cannot actually get a good perspective of how things will be with the Tech Alpha or with what we saw at Global Preview event, because we're talking about older builds. So we don't have everything installed. We don't have all the add-ons, et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, we don't have those builds optimized. So it's a bit of a trade-off there. From everything we heard on the presentation, from the fact that, and not just the presentation, but even with previous interviews that where I talked to Sebastian and I saw others asking Sebastian and Azuba and Microsoft about what's being doing, what they were working on in regards with Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 and performance. There were areas, and when I say this, I'm not saying that everything in the sim will be this fast, but there were areas in which, because of how things were now being changed, especially with multi-threading and all that stuff, that were 10 times faster than before. Of course, they also add other stuff. So, for example, the ground scenery, the amount of mesh, the amount of polys that the ground now has is 4,000 times bigger. So they are adding more stuff into the sim, but at the same time, they are also optimizing performance. What I'm telling everyone that is emailing me or messaging me and asking me on comments, etc., what it is that I think they should be doing, I always tell them that if their computer is running Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 without any issues, sit down and wait. Get 2024, give it a try, use it for, and this is a piece of advice I give everyone that gets a new sim. Use it for a week or two before starting bloating it with add-ons, just to see how the vanilla sim works, to see if the hardware is able to sustain everything that is needed to run the sim. And if you are happy with it, yeah, just start bringing your add-ons into the sim and keep monitoring things. If you're having some issues, try to troubleshoot them before spending money on hardware. Don't go buy the latest CPU. Don't go buy a 4090 if you have a 3080, for example. Don't get 65 gigabytes of RAM just because Microsoft said, you said it perfectly, Murphy, because they say it's ideal. Yeah, I mean, it's also ideal for me to buy a Ferrari to, drive on the Portuguese roads, but I cannot drive it more than 120 kilometers an hour. Well, I can, but I shouldn't, right? So is it ideal? It may be, but it's not something that I would spend money on right now. Wait and see, guys. I know everyone is very excited about 2024. I know everyone wants to have the best performance possible. I like to buy shiny new stuff as well. I would love to get a 4090. I would like to get an upgrade and buy a super mega computer, but we probably don't have to. The stuff that we have right now, it's probably more than enough. So wait and see. I have faith in what Azobo has done. I also know that some things will probably go wrong on launch. It's software, guys, and I'm a software developer, so I know what that goes. So software does that, but don't jump into spending money on hardware before really making sure that you need it.
An important point about hardware, guys. They're gonna now probably announce the 50 series of graphic card at CES and releases them right after. So if you wait until January, the simulator is you're gonna have a lot of time to between November and January to assess your performance and see what you want. And you wait for January when the new cards are gonna come out, which means that the new cards are gonna be there. So if you want to splurge, you can. And if you don't want to splurge, you can buy the older cards, the 40 series for cheaper. So wait until January before you buy anything.
Very good advice.
Yeah, 100%. Right, I have a couple of questions, a quick fire round here, just some, well, we'll see how we get on. So a couple of questions just to address them. Question coming in here, what does Microsoft Flight Sim offer to the beginner in terms of flight lessons? And again, lads, if you want to shout if I'm saying this wrong, but pretty much when it comes to the flight lessons, this is pretty much geared into where the career mode is. It's going to pretty much hold your hand and guide you through the different types of flying that you can do in the sim, right?
Yeah, basically. There's multiple ways you can do it through the career mode. Within the career mode, there's now all the tutorials that we have in 2020 are also kind of in the career mode as well now. So you can actually kind of start your career getting your private pilot, whatever, and it teaches you, hold your hand, how to fly a plane step by step. But you'd also still access that stuff outside of that mode, outside of career mode, if you just want to kind of go quickly learn how they have the airliner missions and things like that. So, but yeah, we were kind of mentioning earlier about, new people getting into the sim. This is the best time now because of 2020 and 2024. This is the best time to get into Microsoft Flight Sim because there's actual in-game tutorials to teach you how, what is an aileron, right? What is a rudder? Those are things. It's funny when I talk to my real world friends and I'm like, yeah, press the rudder. Is that a gas pedal? You know what I mean? They don't know, they don't know. And so there's kids, there's adults, there's people getting into flight sim for the very first time. They don't know these basic things that we already know. And so Microsoft does teach you that. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about that at all.
Sweet. Next one there, questions in relation to model matching and LOD. So again, the model matching, until the sim is released and we get to see it in either the multiplayer format, that's where model matching comes in, or if you're flying with AI traffic, what we've been told, they've added a ton more of AI aircraft, as in the models of that aircraft. They've all different types of Boeings, Airbus, and they have a lot of GA gone in there as well. Now, whether that translates to a better multiplayer model matching experience, I don't know, because again, when you look at the 2020 limits that we have, a lot of the multiplayer model matching mismatching, right? It comes down to what way a developer or a livery designer has a certain code of information in the file. They got to identify the ICAO of that aircraft. And if they don't do that, well, sure, the sim is going to say, right, that's an Airbus 787 Dreamliner Max. It hasn't a clue what it is. So it's going to draw what it thinks it should be. And that's where we're getting these issues. I don't think we're really going to know until full release, but certainly the vibe from what I heard from Jorg, we've added so many more AI models, that's definitely going to help. So fingers crossed that's going to be the case. And then when it comes to LOD, I think there was something interesting there. Again, that's really only going to happen in a multiplayer environment, because this kind of answers the question as well with a working replay mode, which we didn't get to see a working replay mode. I'm sure we'd all love one, right? And flyby cameras and all this jazz. We haven't seen it. It's not in the tech alpha. We do know that they're working on it, right? They have flight control replay as part of the team. They're working on a replay mode. Whether or not that's going to be good to go on release date, we don't know. But when it comes to LOD, this was interesting because this comes back to our thin client. The idea being you only need to see, hence you'll only download what you need. So for example, if you're looking at the exterior of an aircraft and it's zoomed at, let's say, 50%, well, it's not going to give you what it looks like at 70% or 100% zoomed in unless you actually move the camera in, right? Which means it's using a different LOD for that aircraft. That's kind of interesting because you don't need to, like, I think, was it Seb who said during the presentation, lads, if you have a camera set up and you're looking at a left engine and you can only see the left engine, it's not going to bother rendering a right engine. It doesn't need to, you can't see it. But when you start moving across, it'll appear and there you have it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the strong impression that I had from my experience. It's that the sim is overall very heavily optimized, and even going back to what we were talking before about performance. And there are a whole new bunch of LOD levels. I mean, it's much more aggressive in the ways it's going to give you the data depending on the distance that we're watching. There are a lot more of different levels this time, and I think that's going to be very important to keep the performance at least as good as it is right now in 2020, despite the increased levels of detail. And this will impact, I think, a lot of the experience with regards to the multiplayer experience, but also specifically, and this is something that I'm very curious to see how it changes on the final version compared to what was my experience on the global preview event, which was that I felt like, for example, the ground detail, which is a key feature of the new sim. The LOD there, it's something that I felt like it could probably be optimized to be viewable from higher distance, for example. I felt like most of the detail, the big levels of detail on the ground, were mostly seen already when we were on the ground. And flying at like 100 feet, I didn't feel like there was much of a difference looking down. But this may be. I'm curious to see how this experience is going to be on the released version, because I had that impression on my preview time with the new sim. Is that there is a lot of detail there, but to keep the performance, they are only showing it really at the limit of what they think you will want. And I think that people, especially when they have performance headroom, they will probably, like they tried with MSFS 2020, they will try to find ways to increase those to reduce those viewing distances and try to tinker with the sim to get that visual eye candy.
Next jump in question. Do you guys use multi-monitors? Because there is a question there. I didn't get to see multi-monitors over there. I am aware they're updating some things. So, I mean, if you have a home cockpit, and at the moment, if you don't want a virtual cockpit loaded in, you got to do some stuff, right? 2024 is going to offer you the option to load in a centered camera position, and it won't render a virtual cockpit, which is great news for those who have their own home cockpit build. But even for everyone here in the panel, I mean, do you guys use multi-monitors? Is that a thing for you guys?
I'm a VR guy.
Monitor.
Yeah, I'm virtual reality all the way, Murph.
There's no need for triple monitors when you got VR.
Wait, do the actual LCDs on the VR headset count as 2 monitors? Because if they do, yeah, multi-monitor for me.
Well, I have 5 monitors around me, but only one is dedicated to the simulator. I have Navigraph, I have a lot of like different stuff on them, but I only use one flat old style monitor for me, and no VR, no nothing.
Okay. What are your thoughts on this? The improvements or changes to the core flight model, flying aircraft. How did they feel, or did they feel the same, or do they feel more realistic or less realistic?
More realistic.
Yeah,
It
I'll
felt
say.
less. Yeah,
ahead,
I would
you go
say. Sorry. It never felt to me. I know some people sometimes say this, that MSFS 2020 sometimes feels like it's on rails. I never had that feeling, and in 2024 I feel like it's even less on rails. From my experience, the aircraft, the way it behaves in the air, it feels really organic. I'd say it's very organic.
Personally, I'm not a pilot, so I can't really speak for the realism, but I can absolutely speak to the fact that it felt absolutely 100% different from 2020. And if I have to say that this aircraft feels alive, I think from the simulators that are available now, I think that's the most that I can feel that it feels alive. Of course, I can't say it feels realistic because I'm not a pilot, so I've never actually piloted any aircraft in my life. But I definitely think it feels more alive than any other simulator I've tried so far.
I don't think the time we had to try the sim was enough to make a proper assessment, at least for me, because I need to go through a lot of time with the helicopters to be able to understand what's going on. There's a lot of stuff that's going. The technical alpha didn't bring helicopters, so I didn't have more time. I had like less than 90 minutes total at the global preview event to try it. It felt different. The H125 felt unstable, which is good. It's not a bad thing. I felt like I had to be on top of the helicopter a bit more than with the default Bell 407, for example, or the Cabri G2 or other helicopters. Things near the ground felt a bit different. I felt more the in-ground effect. I love to see the downwash of the helicopter affecting grass on the ground. It gave me better perspective of where I was in regards with the ground. Of course, VR helped, but the fact that you have some movement on the ground helps as well. Like the guys were saying, it feels different. It felt a bit more organic. I was excited, and I am excited to try more to do my proper testing with the sim, but it was the little time I had was enough to get me excited about what's coming. Let's just put it that way. Mm-hmm. Again, it wasn't my complete assessment, but it was exciting for me.
And Blue, I mean, your experience of this as well, because I mean, as I said, you use all flight simulators. So I mean, what was it like for you?
Yeah, I didn't get the chance to try the helicopters myself. I really wanted to, but I didn't get a chance to try them. But I did fly the Cessna. I flew the float plane, the firefighting float plane. I flew the 737 MAX. The Cessna felt great. I mean, it's probably one of the best GA filling aircraft I've ever flew in flights, in Microsoft Flight Sim, I should say. The float plane felt really good on water. Like the landing on the water was really, really fun, really cool. It felt cool. Like the way like all the waves actually have collision now. So it's not just like this flat glass plane that you're landing on. Like you're actually gonna get crashing against those those waves, depending on how large the waves are. You can actually feel that in the aircraft. And then also the visuals of that too, seeing the water splashing and the wake behind you is cool. The Max itself, the 737 Max, which I was really curious about, right? Because it's a big debate about, airliner physics in Microsoft Flight Sim. And so a lot of people were like, man, does it feel good? Does it feel better than 2020? And I think it does definitely feel significantly better than 2020. It's not like a night and day difference. I wouldn't say that, but it's definitely an improvement. Oh, it didn't feel like I was flying a Cessna when I was flying a Max. It actually felt like I was flying an airliner. It had weight to it. Now, I didn't he said, didn't really get proper time to really go through all the tests. So, I mean, I would take that with a grain of salt, right? I think it's not going to be until we get to final sim, we get to try out all the planes to really give our really final assessment and fly them like we normally would fly them with our own flight controls, our own settings. So we really know what that feels like. But I would say all around, the flight model felt a lot better. And in the Tech Alpha, minus the global preview, but at the Tech Alpha, I thought flying those aircraft felt amazing. The X Cup felt great. The 172 felt great. I didn't fly the fighter jet. I will be honest. I'm not a fan of any fighter jet in Microsoft Flight Sim. So I mean, it's a for a fun thing to do, but I guess maybe because I do DCS, it kind of ruined me. But no fighter jet, not a single one. I don't care. I mean, I love you developers, but not a single one feels good in 2020 or 2024. So, but no, it was nice.
Question there from the VR pilot. So, do the waves affect boats for helicopters landing on them? I didn't see it affecting boats. I don't know if you guys tried to land on a boat with a helicopter. I mean, I definitely used the 415 flying boat, or the water bomber, and you definitely have to assess what the water is doing, and that's something new, I think, with Flight Sim 2024. There's consequence to your landings now, especially if you're not going for a traditional runway. So if you're going for like a dirt strip, you got to watch out for like bumps and rocks and all this jazz. And when you're going for the water, you have to consider wave height and wave direction, because that will have a huge impact on your aircraft. Didn't notice it with any of the boats though, unless you guys tried it.
No, I haven't noticed anything on the boats, but during the presentation, Sebastian, I think it was Sebastian vlog that mentioned that boats were to be affected by waves. So that's to be expected.
I think he said that maybe not alone. I remember saying something like that, maybe not alone, but it's something that they were looking into implementing, like for the boats specifically. But I don't know if my memory is being faulty here.
Could be. I don't remember, to be honest. I do remember it's mentioning the boat thing, but I don't remember if he said it could be postponed or not. So, yeah.
And guys, what do you think? What do you think of the third-party developers? I mean, everyone in this panel, we all work with third-party developers in some which way. I mean, we're either getting information from them to publish it, or we're working on their add-ons, getting to test them or try them out. What's the vibe from the third-party developer camp around the entire transition from 2020 to 24? I mean, we saw early on a lot of developers saying, yeah, look, it's an instant free upgrade. And then the goalposts were changed to qualify. But what do you mean by an upgrade? I mean, is that going to be your aircraft native to 24, or is that your aircraft compatible with 24 working the same way in 2020? Any feedback there, or what do you think?
I think panic, I think, is what's going on. Ever since they dropped that dev alpha, I think it's just been panic. I talked to one developer, I'm not going to say his name, but he said that he had slept very few hours in the days following that dropping, because what they need to do to make their aircraft kind of like, fully compatible with 2024, not necessarily with the new features, but just making it, kind of working better, is taking much longer than they expected. But I did want to rewind back really quick, because you mentioned the third parties. I want to rewind back to the flight model thing. So I think we got to be very careful with the flight model when 24 drops, because a lot of these developers, or if we don't upgrade an aircraft, like if an aircraft you've been flying in 2020 gets ported over to 2024, it might not be using the 2024 physics and flight model. I mean, you guys can correct me if you think I'm wrong about thinking this, but I believe that when I saw one of the dev interviews, they were saying that there's like some kind of thing like the sim knows if that aircraft is a 2020 aircraft or 2024 aircraft. And if it's a 2020 aircraft, it basically kind of judges it by a different set of rules. And so if you just bring over an aircraft from your 2020 community folder over to your 24 community folder, and you're like, oh man, the flight model sucks. Well, that's not the sim's problem. That's because you brought over a 2020 aircraft. And so I think we got to be very careful when we're comparing our flight model experiences in 24, because for third parties who haven't updated to take advantage of all the new airflow features and physics features, those aircraft are probably going to feel pretty close to the same, or they might even feel a little wonky because some of the in-sim airflow simulation has changed, right? And that aircraft was fine-tuned for the 2020 system. So I think that might be a bit of a curveball there for developers and for people who are flying in flight sim. So but yeah, I just wanted to put that out there. I think that might be a bit of a issue. And also, I'm a little worried that third parties might take advantage of that 2024 tag and say, hey, my aircraft is compatible with 2024, but they've done little to nothing to actually change. They just made it work in the new sim, and then now they call it is 2024 compatible. So I'm worried about that.
One thing that's for sure is when they launched the tech alpha, the dev alpha, there were some issues, and of course the dev alpha was also not only to give developers the ability to go to the simulator and see what they had to do, but also to give Microsoft and Asobo a chance to make compatibility work. In fact, I was speaking with a few developers, and Microsoft has been telling them, if your aircraft is not working right now, don't change things. Just report the issue so we can change things on our end so that it works seamlessly. Because the issue is not that the aircraft is not compatible because of the aircraft. It's not compatible because there are bugs that need to be solved. So maybe now developers are panicking a little bit because they see that the aircraft don't work correctly, but it's on Microsoft to change and to fix those bugs so that the aircraft do work correctly on launch. So I think things are I've been looking at their live stream that they did with the SDK a few days ago, and they already fixed a lot of those bugs, and they're preparing to fix more. So I am not ready to give up the idea that most add-ons are going to work without problems at the beginning. Of course, they're not going to have the 2024 native features, but Microsoft is on it, and and I've been hearing good things about how responsive they are.
You brought a good point, Blue, because there's one thing which is an airplane being compatible, 2020 plane being compatible 2024 doesn't exactly mean it will work flawlessly. And one of the things that you said that concerns you with developers just slapping the 2024 sticker, that shouldn't work. It can work because we have seen stuff on the marketplace that are working. So some developers selling stuff that they shouldn't. We shall not name them, but we all know who I'm talking about. But the fact that they just slap the 2024 logo on top of it shouldn't work for one simple reason. And I have a bit more of understanding of how things work, because alongside I'm also, I have HeliSimmer.com, but I am a producer and project manager at a gaming company that is also working on an add-on for Microsoft Flight Simulator. And we have been going through the SDK. And one of the things, it's one thing for you to say, okay, my airplane works on Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. It just, it flies, it does everything it should. But it's another thing, like you said, to have the 2024 features. And that is where I think there has to be a difference, and people need to understand, people need to learn this and understand this, that if a developer is selling you a plane that they made for 2020, and they are selling it for a fee for you to use it on 2024, you should expect two things, or at least one of them. You should be able to do the walkarounds, which is now a feature of Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. So when you go through the checklist, you should be able to do the walkarounds. That's a feature of the sim that all new aircraft should bring. And the other one is, and I wouldn't say this is mandatory, but it should be able to be used with the mission system. Yes. So you should be able to transport people, transport cargo, et cetera, et cetera. If someone is selling you an aircraft and they say, okay, we have upgraded it to Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, and this is my perspective, this would be my threshold. If I purchase if I pay a fee for a plane or an helicopter, whatever, that is in 2020, if it was upgraded to 2024 and it doesn't bring these features, I would be very upset with that developer. So I think people should really understand this and start demanding these from the developers. Or, they could have different tiers, and the developer could be transparent and say, guys, we have issues with our base head-on for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 in 2024. If you pay this smaller fee, we have everything fixed here, but we do have a 2024 version, but it's much more expensive because we spent a lot more time working on this. And there are things that they need to do. I was talking previously about the poly count, the poly amount, the poly count limit. And again, I don't think there's a lot of aircraft or add-ons out there that go above this poly count, but aircraft can only have 1.5 million polygons right now.
Mm-hmm.
So any aircraft that has more than 1.5 million polys, they could be in trouble. So they will need to release a different version with less polygons. Okay, so I think that this is something that people should be paying attention to and know exactly what they're buying when they do.
Yeah, and like it's also for how the aircraft are built as well. So we're familiar with a lot of add-ons that would override core sim properties, right? Well, that's no longer going to be a thing in 2024. They got to make them their own original piece, which should kind of help with core stability, I suppose. So you're not overriding a font, or you're not overriding a core system. I think when we look at developers and the challenges that they have, there are two upgrade, or hang on, that's the wrong word. There's two ways to get content. You either have a conversion, and I imagine for the most part, the third-party developers, that should be a relatively quick fix. Jorgen Seb said it could be a day's work or even less, and that's a conversion, and that's what the current SDK I think is aiming to do. It's providing third-party developers to get their current add-ons working inside a new simulator, but they still behave like they do on 2020. The upgrade part, that's what Sergio's saying, that's where they need considerable development time. That will take time because they're making these aircraft native to 2024. And then what Blue is saying, well, if someone is going to sell you an aircraft that's native to 2024, well, how do we safeguard this? There are new ways that devs have to sign off on things. Asobo will still do their internal quality check, which with the nicest way possible. I've yet to see good quality control. However, there are new rating systems coming into the marketplace, because you're going to see a overall rating, but then we saw there was going to be a current rating. So say, for example, we buy an aircraft in November 2024, and 6 months later, the developer has not updated it for whatever reason. Well, we can give feedback based on the recent recommendation. So if it starts off at 5 stars, 6 months later, it could be at 2 stars. And that's really helpful for us, especially when we browse a marketplace. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I'm hoping that makes things go that little bit easier. Our last question coming in here, and I got to mess with this, and I even did it with the Tech Alpha, and it comes around seasons, right? I mean, I'm sure you guys all had to go with the seasons in it. And I didn't, I'm unsure if anyone else copped this. Seasons work so far as you change it worked in the Tech Alpha a little bit buggy, but I landed me plane, right? Landed now. What I didn't, I landed it beside the field, right? And I changed the date. And early in the year, I'm looking into a field and I can see, oh look, there's weird kind of weeds in here. And as I increased, or as I moved through the months using the the in-sim calendar time gadget, the crops got bigger. And they became, crops. And then as I went back into kind of wintertime, it became a plowed field. Did you guys experience that? And have, what are your thoughts on the whole transition between the seasons that they've managed to pull off here?
It looks fantastic to me. And one thing that I noticed, I actually, I'm a hobbyist photographer. So I have a lot of pictures of different places and in my portable hard drive at different time of the years. So for instance, I had a picture of Mount Fuji taken from beyond the lake in June, and I went to the simulator and I pulled exactly the same location with the GPS, and I put the same date in it, and it looked the same. And I was like, what the heck? That's crazy. Like down to the color of the trees and whatnot. Of course, there was a little bit of approximation, but the reproduction of the scene was really, really good. And other places, I've tried 3 or 4 or 5 places around the world at the same time, and at the setting the date at the same time. And it was impressively close, but with the lighting and the color of the trees and whatnot, and the type of trees that were there and whatnot. So I was really impressed. I'm going to go back one thing really quickly though, because I don't want accidentally to throw third-party developers under the bus a little bit. There is a caveat about the workaround. Sorry, the missions and whatnot. If you're not on the marketplace, on the official marketplace, your aircraft won't be rated to participate in the missions. So that's a problem on Microsoft side, not on the developer. So we need to say that, because otherwise it's not the developer's fault if they're not in the marketplace, because it shouldn't be obligatory. So I think this is actually one thing that I think Microsoft should solve at least post launch, because we can't have only the aircraft on the marketplace that can participate in missions. Otherwise, it's not the developer's fault if they are limited that way. Anyway, it's like seasons are great, fantastic.
Especially with the amount of time Microsoft is taking to onboard new developers and to accept the add-ons. I know guys that have literally been waiting since 2019.
Oh my God.
And they aren't in the marketplace yet. So yeah.
That's crazy. And like, I know anyone can apply depending on what they want to get out there. Even in the most recent dev stream we saw from the marketplace folks coming on, the questions regarding freeware. I mean, it's still not like if there's a demand for it, they'll do it. But I don't know, lads. Like, think of Forza. Do you remember in Forza you can make like a skin for your car and like people share all of that stuff? And like, I think they're missing a huge opportunity here. Now, I'm sure it's going to be hard to moderate, but I don't know. Like, there's so many creative people in our community, and I'm only like talking about liveries. And yes, we have the scenery gateway idea that'll come back at some stage. I just think, we've seen this with the third-party developers. When you have the publisher and you have, the developers of Microsoft and Asobo, they build us the sandbox. It's the third-party developers, I think, that really kind of push things forward. And we know Microsoft know this because, well, they've onboarded a lot of these first-party devs. There's a great team of people who are now making the default aircraft in the sim. They're no longer default aircraft. Any builds are in there. High performance are in there. Like, we're getting a lot of great first-party aircraft as default. But I still think an awful lot more could be done by opening things up a little bit and just injecting it into their own marketplace, because failing that, we'll always have to use the other resources. And there's nothing wrong with using that, but it keeps a very strong divide between a PC pilot and an Xbox pilot. And I think that's an issue.
And unfortunately, if you think about it, the A380 that just came out, that everyone is mad about, everyone loves it, that's not going to have missions. Because that's not on the market. It will never be.
In saying that, no, I think they didn't say they could do it. This is only said on Wednesday. Jorg was chatting, saying that when fly-by-wire, the A32NX, that was first on the marketplace, and then they changed some code, what they were building, and they took it off again. And then he kind of said they don't want to say it yet, but they think they're okay to inject this back in there again. I mean, put it this way, right? They kind of have to. The A380X is probably the biggest release. End of story, lads. The A380X is probably the biggest release in recent memory of the sim. Why would you not want that in your own infrastructure?
And this might be conspiracy, but I builds is pretty close to Microsoft. They might not want that fly-by-wire on the marketplace.
Yeah.
Well, for me, it's the biggest community achievement of the history of flight simulation, like straight out.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Yep.
There are some very particular cases, because if you think, for example, there's Phoenix and the A320, which is very popular, and it's not on the marketplace. It's not going to be available for airliner missions. And based on the software that they are running, the way they build the aircraft, I don't see that happening. So unless Microsoft finds a way or allows aircraft from outside the marketplace to be available for missions, I don't see how the Phoenix A320 will be available for on the career mode, for example. So
the excuse they have for like having to vet things on the marketplaces, because it will break progression if they allow other things. But personally, this is not a multiplayer competitive game. If I break progression on my own sim, who cares?
Yeah, why does it matter?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, you look at my landings. It's very dodge. Right, we'll go around the table, lads, to kind of close out, which I've really enjoyed getting the chance to chat with you guys and reading all the comments here and all the chats that I'm watching. It's been super sweet. Again, we'll just go around the panel to kind of close us out. We are T-minus 16 days and 19 hours to the release of Microsoft Flight Sim 2024. What are your final thoughts? Anyone start jumping around? We'll start with Blue.
Okay, well, I got one actually that I want to piggyback off of a recent discussion we had about the third-party add-ons for 2024. It's a pretty controversial one, but I did kind of want to get you guys' opinion on it. What do you think? And the same thing with the chat. What do you think about paying for upgraded add-ons for 2024 from 2020? Do you want to pay for them? Do you not want to pay for them? How much needs to be done for it to be worth it for you to pay again for add-on you already own in 2020 to buy it in 2024?
That's a great question.
That depends. I mean,
How much work is done on it?
Yeah, I mean, if we were just talking about the fact that for you to be able to have any kind of aircraft to be compatible with missions and to have the walk around and all that stuff, it really, I mean, I would pay a fee to get that aircraft to work on 2024 if I wanted to use it on missions, for example, which is right now the main thing for me. Well, with the obvious exception of improvement in flight dynamics, et cetera, but being able to fly helicopters around and do search and rescue missions and all that stuff, if I had to pay extra to use my favorite helicopter to do that, it obviously would depend. I mean, I wouldn't pay full price again for the helicopter, right? But if the developer, asked me, I don't know, $10 or $15 to upgrade, if the initial helicopter would cost me $39 or $40, which is kind of, well, 35 is probably kind of the average. $10 for an upgrade to add these features. Yeah, it's a third. Come on, it's $10. It's not like it's $30 again.
Yeah, like I think, ideal world, you don't want to pay for anything. I want it all free and I want it yesterday and I want even more tomorrow, right? It's not going to happen because, our third-party developers, for the absolute vast majority, they're businesses. And if they're spending time developing on older aircraft, perhaps, or older add-ons that may or may not have been as popular as they wanted, or they are popular and they're bringing them into another sim, well, they're a business. I mean, they need to be paid for their time. That's how the thing works, right? I mean, yes, we can say, we want everything free. There's so many different developers, though, and they all have different tastes when it comes to this. Some scenery developers will charge you for a version 2. Other scenery developers don't. And there tends to be quite the gap in terms of quality versus one versus the next. So the whole thing it's quite big. I think, for me, it's going to come down to the add-on, right? I mean, if I'm passionate about an add-on, I will, without question, I want to support the developer. Why? Well, I want to see more. I want more from this developer. Do it right. Make something else now. You want to see them succeed. That's kind of where I'm at. Because if you don't do that, it's what happens to that developer? They go out of business.
Yeah, I think we'll see a bit of everything. We'll see both developers charging a fee, whatever it's going to be for upgrading to 2024 and taking advantage of the new features. But it will depend a lot on what kind of aircraft it is. And people will accept that more or less depending on exactly the kind of aircraft it is, for example, or airport. Because if you imagine if a developer is going to charge like $9 more for an ultralight to have a walk around on the new flight dynamics, that's a much different workload, I think, for the developer compared to someone who has like an airliner and needs to update it to take advantage of the new features. And probably the community will see an upgrade fee there on a complex airplane, I'd say much more acceptable than a small cheap airplane or airport. So, and I think we'll see everything. And we also are going to see developers who will work mostly for free. There are some of them who are very connected to the community, and they will try to offer that upgrade for free for their users. So I think we'll see over the coming months everything between these both ends.
I think it's scalable. I think it's scalable. Like, I mean, I'm not saying that every developer working on, ultralights or general aviation is a solo enterprise, right? Versus not every developer team working on an airliner, is a huge crew. I think it's very scalable. And yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting for sure to see kind of what happens. The flight sim community we have a voice, right? I mean, it's amazing what we can do when we come together to say we don't like this, or no, we like this. So we have strength in numbers there as well.
Pay you with your wallet. If you think an upgrade is worth it, pay for it. If you don't think it's worth it, don't pay for it. That's very simple. Ultimately, people will decide the value of their development time, and some people will make you pay because they think that development time is a lot, so they have to actually charge you for it. Some people will just take the PR win, because some people which has a value as well. Some people will just say we'll give you the upgrade for free, and they will get an advantage for that because of course it's a PR win.
Mm-hmm. Sweet, great question, Blue. James, we should have started with that.
I'm sorry.
But again, okay,
so a whole can of worms on that one.
It's a great discussion though, because there's no right or wrong answer, right? I mean, you're going to get someone who says, yeah, I'm okay to support them, but there's a limit, or you're going to get people to say, absolutely not. I've already invested in this thing. I want this thing to work. But you're not going to get a clear answer. You can argue both sides of both scenarios, right? But again, right, we'll try this again. Any closing thoughts, friends?
I'm done.
As I said, we're 16 days, nearly 18 hours. Brilliant. What's your
yeah, I can start. I'd say that there's all the reasons for the community to be excited, for the developers to be excited, even for Microsoft to be excited, for the business that they have. There's all the reasons there, but at the same time, this is probably one of the most complex pieces of software in this industry, in the gaming industry, in the simulation industry ever built. So we should expect both things, both great things, but also some work to be done, some things that are not going to be as polished as we expect. So the message that I just like to leave to everybody is to be optimistic. I'm an optimistic guy, and everybody should stay optimistic, but at the same time to be patient for the work that's still going to be needed for the sim, for the developers, for everything to be at least in a polished and stable state as we have right now for 2020. It's a lot of stuff coming our way. The new sim, there's a lot of new features, new systems, new things that may work very well or may need some polishing. So we should be optimistic, but expect some additional work in the coming months and possibly even years for everybody.
Well, personally, I think one thing that I hope Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 brought a lot of new blood to the community, which was, I think, sorely needed. It was becoming a insular, a little grumpy community, I would say, during the years in which Microsoft was not there. And now there is a lot of new people that have brought fresh blood and fresh ideas into it, even between developers, because we have to remember that a lot of developers that started with Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 brought new ideas into it. But on the user side, that's the best thing. They brought a lot of people. And I hope that Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 continues this work and bringing more people into the hobby, because the more we are, the better. That's pretty much a given.
Well, I am excited for 2024. I think we should be excited for the sim, but at the same time, I think that people should know what to expect and understand that this is a completely new version. There's a lot of code, like Vasco was saying. There's a lot of new different systems. So there's going to be things that will go wrong eventually, because that's just how the beast is. So what I would like the community to do is to educate themselves in what we are getting into, use common sense, which is very hard to find nowadays with people just going crazy left and right or overhyped or bashing pretty much everything. Um, Rely on the community, ask your questions, seek out for help because there are probably guys out there that have been going through the same as you, and they probably have the answer for the problems that you have. If everything else fails, take a step back, deep breath, and start from zero, start from scratch, see what could be wrong with your sim and how to fix it. And again, rely on the community. I think that we are going to see very good times ahead with the new sim, but we are going to have to be a bit patient, guys. That's the thing, and I think all of us in this panel know that. We have seen it with Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, and this is going to happen with 2024 again. We have to be patient, and we have to be like it was already said, be positive with the new sim. I wish you all an amazing launch, that your SSDs don't crash, and the sim has good performance. I hope we don't have to buy new hardware. And I'll see you on the other side of November 19th, winning the new sim.
Sweet. Blue, anything to add to that?
I
Just
got nothing else.
say it all. Say it all. I think Sergio had the perfect message to end this.
Yeah. Like again, like it's Murphy's Law, right? And it's a terrible thing to say that, but like we want 2024 to come out as good and as strong as we expect and we want, right? I mean, we're passionate about this, but they're not turning off or getting rid of 2020. So as Sergio says, go back to zero. Well, we always have the option to stay put in 2020 while this other one might have to go back in for a couple of fixes. So like, it's not, that's it. They've ruined it. It's all over. We're off now. And we're going to go out in the real world instead. We're not going to flight sim anymore. But that's not going to happen, So we still have 2020 there. And it's kind of funny, right? Isn't it? Like, there's still tons of releases that are coming out on 2020 first. And this is going to be after the release of 2024. So we got the option with both sims here, guys.
Yeah,
Murphy,
I'm diving deep. I'm diving straight in 24. I'm completely gonna be kicking 2020 to the curb.
Yeah, but now Murphy owned it because it says Murphy's Law. So if something wrong happens, it's his fault.
I've been waiting all night to say that.
I'm surprised it took you this long, honestly.
I wrote it down and I forgot, but it's grand.
Clearly. Well, my headset is beeping at me, telling me that it's time to wrap things up. So to all of our panelists in the great chat, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. It's been a ton of fun. I've just been enjoying listening to you guys chat, both before we went live and afterwards. It felt like a great natural conversation. So thank you all so much. They've been here for at least the past, I think, 3 hours now. So it's high time that we can let them have a stretch and take a bit of a break. And on behalf of all of us here at Flight Sim Association, super grateful to all of you for jumping on today's stream. If you'd like to help support us, you can join FSA for free. You can also become a captain and help us by just helping cover some of the costs of running these types of shows and live streams and Flight Sim Expo. As I mentioned at the beginning of those stream, if you all didn't see that, we just announced as of today a new partnership with Navigraph, where if you don't already have a subscription, you'll get an extra month for free, whether you sign up for their monthly or their annual subscription if you do that through our website. We also have a new partnership coming with another big name that I am not going to reveal quite yet, but that'll be coming out in the next couple of weeks. And in addition to all the excitement we have about Microsoft Flight Sim 2024, let's remember as well Flight Sim Expo 2025 coming up in June. The date for registration is December the 14th at 12 p.m. Eastern, as Phil just conveniently reminded me. So that is the first day you'll be able to get your tickets. As we have for every single one of our shows, it'll be that first $50 rate covering all 3 event days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, for our first 200 FSA captains to register starting on December the 14th. Once again, on behalf of Phil and myself, everyone else who helps out at Flight Sim Association throughout the course of the year, our wonderful panelists, the awesome chat, thank you so much for joining us today. And, we'll see how everything goes on November the 19th.